Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and holy moly do we have a build for you. This is Cyclone and Frozen Legion using the new Runecraft Doomfletch Mace, as we're calling it, because it is a runecraft that lets you have up to 50% of extra fire, ele, and cold damage from your physical all at once, similar to how Doomfletch works. It's from 30 to 50%, and it's a runecraft that costs something like, I don't know, 15 to 20 divines, depending on power runes, and it can only be put on two-handed maces. This thing is something I wanted to play around with this entire time, and it kind of inspired me to give Frozen Legion another shot and just go big on the one-taps. So if you're unfamiliar with Frozen Legion, it's kind of a spell, I suppose, that then triggers, or when you cast it, calls up an attack that fires off 6 clones of yourself that do a sweep attack, and it can hit really hard. It can actually hit so hard that, as you may have noticed during that Katarina, you can somehow bypass phases. It's the only thing I've actually ever experienced that properly bypasses certain boss phases that are like hard-coded in. And it feels like there's something going on weird there because of like multiple hits from one triggered attack that like queue in and scale in or some shit, and once one of the hits like actually gets you to the breakpoint of the next boss phase, the other hits can still come in afterwards. So it's got some weird interactions there if you hit hard enough, because I chain farmed tier 17s with Katarina ziggurats. I probably did about 10 of them, and about 3 or 4 of them I actually bypassed some phases and bypassed them in a heavy way. So it was pretty interesting, and likewise we did it for some other little boss fights too, like the first one that you just then saw. So aside from that, it is a pretty standard Cyclone Shockwave build. I have not really fucked with Cyclone Shockwave since the original Beefton, like a few years back. I think it is, a few years back. And it feels pretty damn good. Like, Cyclone itself doesn't do any huge amounts of damage. In my setup, I think it's got 5, 6, 7 million DPS, something like that. But then Shockwave itself actually hits for like 6 or 7 million average, which means that it's actually delivering huge, girthy one-taps as well. And it's actually just a build by itself. But if you go slow enough, if you go hard enough with your hits, you can incorporate some Frozen Legion into the mix as well, and it's just a button you press that gives you huge single target whenever you need it. I wouldn't really ever recommend playing Frozen Legion by itself. Like, it's just not going to be a good feeling build at the end of the day, because there's lots of situations where Frozen Legion doesn't, spawn its little clones and stuff if you're too close to a wall, if you're surrounded by walls, like Toxic Sewers style, things like that, means that you're not really getting Frozen Legion value, and it feels kind of bad to play. So it's a good secondary skill, especially now that we have room for a big secondary since we're not using totems. It's just a really good button to press when you need heavy amounts of damage, and it's pretty damn useful. Though this can just be a pure Cyclone Shockwave build, because my Cyclone Shockwave does hit really hard, but it wouldn't really be anything special, I don't think, without the incorporation of that Frozen Legion as well. So this character at this point has cleared a lot of Ubers. I think it's actually killed every Uber. I've thrown it against all content at this point, because when a character can actually take on Ubers well, then I decide to go all out with it. I do die here because I got cheesed by the tentacle things, and yeah, I die occasionally, but it's a fairly resilient character. It can take hits, it can do all content fairly smooth, thanks to the large ES pool and good physical damage reduction and all that. And I'll go into building the character in a sec as well. But as you can see, the uber damage is pretty girthy. I do have something like 50 or 60% chance to deal double damage while my focus is up. So when some of those double damage procs kick in well with the Frozen Legion, you can see some serious life bars being moved. And realistically, I think the biggest version of this build is probably a Slayer with some charge stacking, with some Relicash, with some triple damage action from the belt, and that's probably going to deliver the biggest, fattest one-taps out there, and should make for a very satisfying Frozen Legion and Cyclone playstyle. This is an Inquisitor, however. I chose to go Inquisitor because I knew I'd solve crit pretty easily by getting a lot of strength and int, and then also not having to use anything like Ellie Weakness or Trinity, because yeah, we do deal a lot of early damage, and didn't really want to have to wait for Trinity stacks. Didn't want to have to do another curse if we're just trying to do some raw, thick one taps. At the end of the day, it didn't really matter because I usually start out on a boss fight by cycloning a good bit to build up some rage and make sure I've shocked the boss a good amount, and then I'll come in with the heavy Frozen Legion. So you can actually have a bit of ramp time, and yeah, it won't really matter if you're an Inquisitor or not, and Trinity, Rage, all that is perfectly fine. And yeah, I just went ahead and did like a lot of boss fights. I actually just hemorrhaged money for the sake of the stream's content. So I did like, I don't know, 5 Exarchs and bought a lot of Uber Eater sets. I think I did maybe 15 Uber Eaters total. Basically just hemorrhaged money, like, I don't know, minus 70 or 80 divines, and not a lot really happened. But it's just fun content and good to test your character against. When it's actually feeling pretty damn good. Like, I did a lot of tier 17s. I actually leveled off of tier 17s on this character because I could do it reliably enough. If you're not rolled with some particularly dogshit modifiers, then XP was actually going up pretty much always. The one taps are juicy. The feared and all this type of content gets pretty much decimated and one tapped, and that was long before I really fully upgraded the build and the character, so it can work off of lower budgets. Don't know what the future of runecrafting is, but I think it can be done with different setups anyway. It doesn't necessarily have to be this Doomfletch style mace, and my mace is pretty good as well, as you see in a second. Not sure what else to mention. The only other thing is that this may end up being Build of the League. It feels like it's actually Build of the League material. It gives Mamba a real run for its money. That is Viper's Track of Mamba, which I was going to basically proclaim Build of the League regardless of what else happened. But this one has come in with some serious girth and has some good flavor and novelty of its own, and I think has had an easier time doing most bosses on the whole, even though Mamba's very good too. So with that, let me go ahead and show you how I built the character. So here we are, level 95 Inquisitor, cold one with the boys. Of course, the boys being our Frozen Legion. Press a button, get sweeps, do lots of damage. Cold one, of course, it is Frozen Legion. So we are based around the Doomfletch Runecraft. Like I said, it's from 30 to 50% weapon physical as extra damage of each element. So you can get kind of fucked on the roll. But we could also get a bigger roll and do even more damage. The theme of the build is basically really slow, heavy hitting mace. So you can even just go, no Runecraft and do a Marohi style build if you really want instead with the unique mace. I don't think it would deliver quite as much damage, but it might be in a similar ballpark, and I don't know, you can do some other stuff with it. In any case, we are tri-elemental. We deal all kinds of elemental damage, but also lots of lightning because we are converting our Cyclone to full lightning for bigger shocks. But yeah, you can get maces with this Runecraft, once people are done with them, you can get them for a good bit cheaper because they're just trying to get rid of them, and you've already committed all the runes to one of these. I instead opted to craft from absolute scratch, so I grabbed a Karoo mold that was 29 quality. That cost 1 divine. I rolled just a very few times and then got dictators randomly, and then used one of my fracturing orbs that I'd farmed from harbingers and stuff. So I've been doing a lot of farm this league, all kinds of directions, and I had a few fracturing orbs, used one of them, got the lucky dictators, and then finished it off with nothing too crazy. What I had was a tyrannical roll that didn't have an extra prefix, so I just locked prefixes and then rolled physical damage or physical roll from harvest, and that's what we got. So it's a very good mace. It's not as good as it gets, but it is very good. And I realistically spent like 9 divines making it, maybe something like that. So I got lucky with the fracture. Don't expect to follow suit with that exact pile of luck. But yeah, we're looking for just big damage ranges. So to get a mace that has something like 500 to 900 damage range isn't very expensive. That's pretty, comfortable to do. But you can get even higher, up to about 1,000 is what I was going for. And then, yeah, the Runecraft itself is 4 power runes. That's basically the entry barrier for that. And everything else is pretty normal for what I've been playing this entire league with, I suppose I'll say. Reusing the chest from the first Inquisitor, so bunch of armor evasion and stuff, armor energy shield and stuff, with some fizz damage reduction. Like I said, we are an Inquisitor, so trying to stack to some extent to fix crit. I did go out of my way to actually make this kind of a well-rounded character, much more defense and, viability for all content. So it's got some good max res, it's got some good armor and less damage taken from physical. So we've got reliable endurance charge generation, we've got physical damage reduction here, using a few flasks for extra armor as well. Don't think we get crazy amounts of armor. Got a molten shell in my other slot, so just molten shelling all the time. It's a pretty durable beast. The passive tree looks something like that. So we're going up for a cluster, we're going up for a cluster here, we're getting a bit of rage over here. We did use an impossible escape. I only put this thing in like in the last few hours of the character, to be fair, because it was an upgrade that I didn't really consider up till that point, and they're not that expensive. So this thing, Imbalance Guard, 3 Divines. I've never actually used this one before because usually it's very expensive, and for our build it's pretty damn nice. Gives max res, bit of extra fizz, better rage sustain, and some crit and accuracy. Prior to that, I just had this stuff spec'd here, and I was also using this martial prowess. And I also think I did have a cluster for extra crit, but once I've actually filled out the crit, I no longer needed that cluster. So we've got clusters just for extra crit multi, basically. So crit multi there, crafted that myself with that as well. Very cheap to craft in the end. And we're just looking for something else, a bit of extra double damage, and I needed to solve Mana Leech with that. Otherwise, I'm actually reusing the Lethal Pride from the other character as well, which just has some double damage, strength, which doesn't do much, double damage, leech, melee damage, and then also a double damage that I spec'd here because it was worth doing. Otherwise, another large cluster, similar sort of action, but I did take advantage of a Megalomaniac to get Overlord here, which also has Prismatic Carapace and a bit of life. I think this thing was 1 Divine, so the idea is just to get Overlord for Fortify to save yourself on going to the Fortify area. You can get it on a large cluster, but it is hard to roll. I needed some extra reservation over here, so I rolled this thing myself. Nothing special, but just a bit of extra reservation. And then a Watcher's Eye that does a bit of Hatred crit. It's a good time to buy these as well. I think this entire Watcher's Eye was 2 Divines, and then I divined it once and got lucky with the crit. But yeah, the idea is just to get Hatred crit and then run Hatred. The Determination, bit of extra cherry on top, but you can do some extra stuff with that as well. Other Determination mods if you so choose to do. But we are running Hatred, Herald of Purity, Herald of Ash, Precision on my life for a bit of extra crit and accuracy, and then Determination on my mana bar. I did contemplate doing Eldritch Battery and Mind Over Matter with a Devouring Diadem, but this actual kind of hybrid thing ended up working out better because I could use the Mastery for making this bigger, which is this one here. And I wanted a hat. I needed a hat that had armor for that purpose as well. So I grabbed a Fractured Hat here, just rolled it to have, I don't know, something good with essences for reservation, and then grabbed a ring here. Once again, Fracture, rolled it with Chaos Harvest until some good stuff happened. I did end up going over the top of my res, so I'm more overcapped than I need to be, than I would normally be personally. Grabbed a Movement Speed Fracture, 1 Divine, I think, something like that. Once again, Chaos Essences until some good stuff happened. Reusing the same gloves from previous build, nothing special. Do need some dexterity though, so dexterity, and then grabbed a belt and then just rolled attack reroll until some good stuff happened once again, and then crafted some resists on top of that. And then reusing an amulet from previous character that does some other shit. And then our Herald of Purity here gives us extra buff effect and physical damage, and then it's got crit multi and attacks, early damage, implicits, which I think this thing was couple Divines, Just look for some kind of good implicits, but you don't have to do a Herald of Purity ring like this. It's not really mandatory. You can do whatever you want for rings, ideally, kind of up to you. But I thought this would be a good route if I could find one good implicits, and this one's not bad. So our link setup is Cyclone into Fizz to Lightning. We've got Awaken Ellie damage with attacks, Pulverize, Shockwave, and Awaken Melee Fizz. I should actually have this over here for Frozen Legion, but I just left it here for bigger shocks. Otherwise, Frozen Legion, all about hitting hard. So we've got Frozen Legion, Ellie damage with attacks, crit damage, Ellie focus, because we are getting all of our elemental ailments from Cyclone and Shockwave, Fizz damage, and Pulverize. So that's what that looks like. That's what that looks like. And the MTX that make things look so goddamn flashy, as always, Despair, Herald of Ash, and then we've got Apollyon Shockwave effect. Does make things feel pretty explosive overall. Herald of Ash is mostly there just for a bit of extra flair, but also a bit of extra clear for the overkill effect, because the buff itself does not do much in this type of build. We've got Hatred, Faster Attacks, Leap Slam, Herald of Ash. I don't actually even Leap Slam that often because we do have a very slow leap, so it's more about blinking around. You might be able to save links if you don't feel like doing that, but it's still kind of worth doing, I think. I then self-curse Assassin Mark because I just don't have room to put in a life tap and mark on hit. Molten Shell, Arrogance to Precision, and then Determination, Herald of Purity, Frostblink, and Blood and Sand over here. Absolutely crazy build. Had a lot of fun with it. I decimated the game, especially Ubers, and yeah, Frozen Legion maybe a bit slept on in some contexts, but yeah, Cyclone Shockwave I think is a very powerful thing right now. Can be done in many different ways. Doesn't have to be Doomfletch Mace, doesn't even have to incorporate Frozen Legion. You should probably be kind of aware that Cyclone Shockwave is doing decent things at the moment, so you can go out there, get yourself some Shockwave, get yourself some Cyclone, and have a pretty conventional Cyclone build that isn't just, you know, cast on crit and stuff. So hopefully that's everything covered. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.